Today, we are diving into the really fascinating world of complementary health. We're going to look at two completely different ways people are trying to find well-being. The first one treats the body like a biological machine that we can actually hack. And the second, well, it sees the body more like an instrument that we can tune. Let's get into it. It all really starts with a problem I think every single one of us can relate to. Our lives are just fast. Our work is demanding, we're always plugged in, and as this research puts it, we are constantly overactivated. It's like our bodies and our minds are just always on, and we've kind of forgotten where the off switch is. And that constant hum of stress, it's what's driving millions of us to look for answers. So let's start with that first path. This approach looks at the body from a purely biological point of view. It's a system, right? A network of nerves, hormones, and electrical signals. It's a super complex machine that we can measure, that we can understand, and that we can even hack by getting to its internal control panel. And at the very heart of that machine is something called the HPA axis. Now, think of this as the command center for your body's entire stress response. When you feel threatened, and that could be anything from a scary deadline to, a tiger, this system just kicks into high gear. It floods your body with hormones like cortisol. So the whole idea of hacking the body is that if we can find a way to directly influence this axis, we can physically turn down that stress response. So how do you actually do that? Well, one really well-studied method is Qigong. It's a traditional Chinese practice involving these slow, controlled movements. And what's so important to understand here is that these benefits, they're not just vague feelings. They're backed up by actual randomized controlled trials that show Qigong leads to a whole laundry list of measurable physical improvements, from literally lowering stress hormones to boosting your immune cells. It's like a direct intervention on the body's hardware. And another powerful hack works in a really similar way: music. Research from places like Harvard Medical School is showing that music is not just entertainment. It can physically change and even rewire our brains. It's acting directly on the neural networks that control our memory, our emotions, and even our motor skills. And the results can be absolutely stunning. In one study with stroke patients, the ones who listened to music every day saw a 60% improvement in their verbal memory. I mean, just look at that comparison. That's more than double the improvement of those who listen to audiobooks. So this isn't just about feeling a little better. We're talking about measurable neurological repair. Okay, now let's just switch gears completely and look at that second path, which is very different. This approach, it's not about hormones or brain scans at all. It's about a concept that's been central to so many traditions for thousands of years. This idea of a vital life force, or an energy, that flows through all of us and can be brought into harmony. Acupuncture is actually the perfect bridge between these two worlds. See, a Western medical doctor might explain how it works by pointing right back to that HPA axis we were just talking about, saying it stimulates nerves and balances stress hormones. But if you ask a practitioner of traditional Chinese medicine, the goal is totally different. For them, it's all about unblocking and restoring the flow of something called qi. So what is qi? Well, it's described as the fundamental life energy that, animates our bodies. In this worldview, when your qi is flowing freely and it's in balance, you're healthy. But when it gets blocked or disrupted, that's when you start to experience illness, whether it's physical pain or emotional stress. So the goal is always to restore that natural, healthy flow. And this idea of a vital energy, it's not just limited to qi. You see other practices like Reiki or crystal healing that are built on really similar ideas. Concepts of a universal life force, unique energy frequencies, and vibrations. The principle is pretty much the same. The body's an energy field that can be influenced or tuned to help it heal. Crystal healing, for example, suggests that different stones have their own stable, unique energy patterns. Each type of crystal is believed to resonate at a very specific frequency that can then interact with our own body's energy field. So what you see here are amethyst and rose quartz, which are said to help soothe stress and encourage feelings of love. Right, so the theory is that by placing these crystals on or near your body, they kind of act like tuning forks, helping to bring your own, maybe unstable energy field back into a state of harmony. Amethyst, which you see here, is believed to specifically help ease sadness and focus the mind. This quote from a practitioner really captures the essence of this whole worldview. The body is like an orchestra of different frequencies, and when one part is out of tune, it creates this dissonance, which we call illness. The healer's job, then, is to help guide that part of the body back to its correct, healthy frequency. So here we are with these two very different models for well-being.
One is based on measurable biology, and the other is based on this idea of subtle energy. And this brings us right to the central conflict, that tension between these ideas and the really rigorous demands of modern scientific evidence. And this is the absolute crucial question, right? While scientists can measure your cortisol levels and they can track your brain activity, is there any way to actually prove that a force like qi or some universal energy even exists? This is where these two paths really sharply diverge. When claims about the physical world are made without evidence that can be reliably tested over and over again, they often get classified by the scientific community as pseudoscience. And practices like Reiki are frequently brought up as examples, with critics basically saying there's no empirical evidence that the universal life force it's based on is a real physical thing. Now, the scientific critique is really specific. A major review of clinical trials on Reiki back in 2008 found that the studies claiming it worked were just full of methodological flaws. They used way too few people, they weren't designed properly to rule out the placebo effect, they tended to exaggerate their own findings, and maybe most importantly, other scientists haven't been able to replicate the positive results. From a purely scientific standpoint, the hard evidence just isn't there. So all of this kind of brings us to a bigger, almost more philosophical question. We have one path that's backed by measurable data, and another that is deeply, deeply meaningful to millions of people, but doesn't have that scientific proof. And this really forces us to step back and ask a really fundamental question about what healing and wellness actually mean to us. On one side, you have the world of brain scans and clinical trials. That's the language of hacking the body's systems. And on the other, you have the world of crystals and energy flow. That's the language of tuning the body's harmony. They are two different approaches, two different languages, two different sets of beliefs, but they are both aimed at the exact same human desire, to feel better, to find some balance, and to just be well. And so we're going to end with this question for you to think about. In your own life, in your own pursuit of health and happiness, what really carries more weight? Is it the cold, hard data that can be measured and graphed and replicated? Or is it the subjective, personal experience of what simply feels healing to you? There's no single right answer here. And where you happen to land on that spectrum probably defines which of these paths you find more compelling.